Hello, Guy Glidden here, and this is a screencast that you're going to want to check into if you're looking at two assignments as a part of the research class. First is, this is going to be helpful to you if you're getting assignment number 4, that's the improvement project proposal organized. And secondly, this is going to provide the clues that you need to organize assignment number 5, which is the use of memory jogger tools within that particular assignment. So this is where this fits in the sequence of things. Now, in addition, you're going to see some other support tools along that are going to help you with assignment 5, but this is kind of a preparation step because the emphasis of this is to basically identify some hotspots where improvement projects probably fail. So this is going to, I've created a list that's based on my experience and a lot of review and supporting projects, and also in reading and working with projects to address the issue of why do so many efforts to improve fail? And simply look at what's the percentage of New Year's resolutions that actually result in action. Data tells us it's pretty doggone small. Why do schools discard existing strategies in favor of new directions without completing a post-audit of why the old strategy was not successful? And I've seen that through a long educational career. I'll get a big announcement when I was working, or I see it in the newspapers now, of a new strategy that's being developed. And nobody seems to want to talk about, well, why did not the old one work? Why are we changing? So without knowing why the old one failed, obviously we can't work. So basically, what this is going to do is this is going to help you in these ways. This will provide you a summary, a checklist for assignment number 4. So you can look at these hotspots and see how you address these in your improvement project. It's going to be an identification list of assignment number 5. Okay, now, in terms, and we'll probably come back to this page a little bit later, but I do have some very specific directions, and this will always also be provided in Moodle about availability as to where do you submit assignments. In other words, drop boxes that are available for draft copies and final copies of assignments 4 and 5. So there'll be a lot of arrangements there to help you out in this process. Okay, here is a very brief list of the hotspots that I've identified. Now, I have a paper that's also available in Word, because you can get a lot more content on a Word document that you can on a PowerPoint, that are going to go through some of these things and provide some discussion. So the purpose of this is very briefly to go through these 9 points and provide you with a little food for thought in relation to this. So the first one here is, and these are in no particular order of importance, but they all seem to be a factor. One would be dividing big goals into multiple workable goals. Now, I provided this example. I suspect we all want to be physically fit, but we also have difficulty understanding what does that mean and how do we set some workable goals. Well, as a personal note, as I began to age, and I'm a little older than most of you, I did some investigation and found out that fitness for me has to be a focus on cardiovascular fitness. And that should be the basis of my workout program and how I try to keep physically fit. Because if the heart stops, nothing else matters. So looking good and losing weight are all wonderful goals, and I certainly commend those people who are working on those things. But cardiovascular fitness has got to be number 1. So that would be my way of dividing a big goal, physical fitness, into workable goals. Let's find things that I can actually do. Number 2 is pretty clear, providing an accurate record of previous outcomes. So when we do something, we need to look and see what did we really accomplish? So when we have an old strategy that's being abandoned, what was good about it and what wasn't so good about it? And how detailed can we be about the process of what we accomplished and what we didn't? So how do I know how I'm going to improve my workout program, my physical fitness program, unless I know what I've actually tried to do and have a pretty close record of what I've actually accomplished in a previous goal? Then from there we need to go to an accurate record of the previous process. So remember, I divided previous outcomes and previous process. Let me give you a funny story on process. When I was working in school districts and trying to manage test results, people could look at test results for years after the fact, and they could remember where we went up and where we went down and where we seemed to be stalling. And so it was pretty easy because the numbers are like recorded in granite. But people could not have very short-term memories about the strategies that were used at the same time. So somebody would look at our test reading scores and said, you know, our reading scores weren't very good in that period of time. And I would say, well, what did we do? And they'd say, well, you mean? And I said, well, how much time did you devote to reading? How was reading handled? What was the text series that we were using? A lot of specific questions about process. So both 2 and 3 have to do with getting a big record going on of what we're talking about. And that leads up to what I call getting the total pictures. And when I talk about total pictures, I'm interested in looking at the overall basis and what are the factors that would argue for or mitigate we need to improve, and what are the factors that would argue against the improvement process. And I realize that there are going to be people on both sides of the issue, and then we need to look to see, is there a path forward? Because look, for example, if you want to look no further historically at the issue on gun violence debate. Apparently, by the time you receive this, the United States Congress, as well as some states, are slated to take some action. Everybody wants to prevent other tragedies, as we're experienced with, but nobody seems to be in agreement with how to do it. So without getting a total picture, it would be pretty difficult for us to figure out some kind of thing that's going to succeed. Then from here, we need to look to getting agreement on priorities. So by the time we get to well into the development of a new idea, it's pretty obvious that almost any topic that you come up with, everybody wants to branch out and do a lot of things at the same time. Well, the data is pretty clear on this factor. We cannot multitask either as groups or individuals. So if you think that you can adequately text and drive an automobile, the data is dead set against you. You can only do one at a time, and when you text, you have to leave the automobile. If you happen to be still behind the wheel, bad things happen. So that's enough of that. So, but we need to set priorities, and so we need to figure out a process. And 5 and 6 go together because obviously if we're setting priorities, we also need to talk about the concept of buy-in from stakeholders. Now, who's the stakeholder? Well, in a school setting, teachers, students, parents, administrators, community members are all stakeholders. By stakeholders, they're all customers in a sense, but they're also participants in the process. They have something to gain. They all have a vested interest in making sure we do well in this process. So the more groups we get buy-in from, the better off we're going to be in that we're going to be moving down the road together. But if we make a decision and some of our stakeholders aren't with us, bad things happen. So getting buy-in is really important. Now we're talking about, number 7 talks about using goals to identify measurable outcomes. And I have a little exercise for you, and that is every organization, including every school represented by a teacher in this group, has a mission statement. And you could probably find it. It's probably listed on your website or in your directory. So you should be able to take the mission statement of your school and director organization, and you should be able to identify at least one goal that's identified or implied in this mission statement. So one thing that should be happening as a result of this goal. And then you should be able to take at least that one goal and go to one example of a measurable outcome that can be identified by this goal. If you can't do that, we've got problems. So it's very important to go from broad stroke goals to measurable outcomes. Now, once we get to this stage, 8 and 9 is all about details. And I'm sure by this time, many of you have received feedback from me from class, and it seems like a broken record because I always keep talking about details. Well, doggone it, strategies for improvement and strategies for research have this in common. They all feed on details. So if we say we're going to implement a new reading strategy, we spend lots of money in buying texts and materials and apps for our iPads and whatever else we're doing there, but we don't have a very specific plan about Who's going to get educated on this? How are we going to do in-service? How much time are we going to devote on a day-to-day basis? What kind of non-negotiables do we have for using these things? A lot of the details have to be ironed out, and they really need to be developed. And so not only do we have to organize the details, but after we get the details on paper and setting them down, then we need to organize an accountability for the process. Somebody's got to be keeping track of this and keeping us organized. I'll give you an example here. Years and years ago, it's been eons ago, when I had a daughter in the elementary school and I had a math teacher in that grade that I think had a bit of math phobia. After the fact, it appeared to be that case. So every time the school schedule was changed in that school, they lost some teaching time. They had an assembly, the school late. The thing that got canceled in that grade level was the math class. And I would keep track of it because I'd ask my daughter when she'd come home from school, how'd you do today? And she was pretty quick because she liked math. We didn't have math today. So I started keeping track of it, and the number of days that I counted, even after I discovered the problem and shared with the principal, that we lost for math on that day were astronomical. Accountability is important in the process. Now, the Word document that you're going to see available on Moodle has some more example, some details and discussion of this, but those are things that you can use as a checklist to see, number one, how have I accounted for those things in my improvement plan? And then, and this is the big part of this little tool I've also put on here, I have put together an example on a matrix. And on one side of the matrix, I have identified the hotspots. On the other side of the matrix, I have identified a directory of tools that are available in Memory Jogger that can be used. Now, not all are going to be as effective as others, depending on what your improvement project is, but this should give you a short starting list of possible places to look. If you look at your checklist and you say, whoopsie, well, let me take a picture. Suppose you say, you know, for my improvement project, it would be difficult for me getting buy-in from stakeholders and getting teachers to agree with priorities would be a problem for my improvement project. I've identified a couple of examples of tools that would be available in Memory Jogger to help you out, and those are also available in the process. So that's what's going to be available for support for you. Now, what's it going to go along with? Well, let's go up to the top here, because you're also going to find available a new rubric and a new screencast about Assignment 5. So you will now have access to screencasts on all 5 of the assignments, and you will have rubrics available for all 5 of the assignments. Let's talk about submissions for work. Okay, you should already have, or if you haven't done so, you will find out there is a Dropbox already available in Moodle for Assignment 4 for the Improvement Plan draft, and one for the Measurement Plan draft. There are 2 Dropboxes for drafts on Assignment 4. There's also going to be a Dropbox provided for Assignment number 5 draft. And finally, there will be a single Dropbox for the final product. In other words, when you get through with all your drafting, and you'll have lots of opportunities to send it to me for feedback, when you get it back together, you're going to put together a written document for your improvement project proposal. It'll be your final copy that you will submit, and it will include Assignment number 4 and Assignment number 5. That's enough for now to get you started, and look for lots of other materials and announcements coming up. Bye-bye.